And thank you for all your help with this.
Yes, thank you for, and all y'all are doing to make things easier for us, volunteers, So awesome. I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
All right, we are at 5:01. I think we'll just give one more minute, see if anyone else jumps in. All right, well, with that being said, I think we're ready to jump in. We do have a lot to cover. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm just going to get us. I do want to note we are recording this for note-taking purposes. I'm not sure, and I don't think that we can record the breakout sessions, but we'll talk more about that. But I'm going to turn the recording on now. All right, so hello and welcome to our first workshop on restructuring boards and commissions. This workshop is designed to help inform on what is being proposed for a pilot restructure and also to get your feedback and input today. Although this presentation is posted and is available online, and there's been some media coverage, at this point there's only been 2 focus groups that have heard this presentation. So we hope that today and in these workshops that will provide more context and some clarity and even hopefully spark some new ideas that we can hear from y'all in the breakout sessions today. But first, let's talk about some housekeeping. If you could, in the chat, if you'll post your name, what board or commission you're associated with or were, or maybe in what neighborhood, just so we have an idea of who is in the room with us today. Again, please note we are recording these. Not sure what the breakout sessions will look like, but in this main room, it is being recorded and we can post that to the project page. Okay, so we have today's agenda up. We'll start off with this presentation, and again, hopefully it'll provide a little bit more context about what is being proposed. And then we will dive into 2 breakout sessions. One having more conversation about advisory boards and the other working groups. And we'll be using a Jamboard, which we'll talk more about as well. Questions. We do have a lot to cover today. So if you do have questions throughout, we ask that you please put it in the chat, which we'll be capturing. If we have time at the end, we can talk through some of those questions, but we will follow up with another FAQ sheet afterwards. So again, please put your questions in the chat so we can capture those. And then if you should have questions after today's workshop, you're always welcome to please keep emailing that Restructure pilot mailbox. And again, we're going to keep adding to the FAQ sheet, keep these conversations going. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Councilwoman Gwen Whistler to start us off.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Gwen Whistler, and I'm on City Council. And so I just want to emphasize today, first of all, thank you for being here. We really appreciate the community jumping in and getting involved with this pilot program. This is just a start. We're starting this conversation out, and basically what we're going to be doing is going over where we are right now with the current boards and advisory, and then go into what the proposal is, with the idea that this is clearly a starting point. So right now, I just want to remind everybody that advisory boards and commissions are created by the council to help city council make policy decisions. And I want to be upfront with you. Right now, our system just isn't working, and we know that we need to make improvements, and we're just trying to, again, this is first first shot at this and just trying to come up with a better solution, one that's more inclusive, more efficient, and more strategic and more aligned with City Council's goals. So with that, I will turn it back over to Sarah.
All right. So I also want to start off by saying we understand and we value the importance of our boards and commissions, and we know how important these venues are to get community feedback that forms public policy and helps City Council make those important decisions. But there are some limitations, and we are feeling that more lately, it seems. So how did we get here? Internally, we have been conducting an internal assessment of our boards and commissions, and we have found and heard often that these committees are not as effective or as utilized in the way that they could be. There are inconsistencies in the process and communication flows and even transparency. This isn't any one person's fault. The current structure just isn't working, again, as it could be. A good system should be reliable and have communication flows built into it. With the current structure, we are relying on individuals that may come and go, like a single council person, liaison, or a single staff person. This proposal is to be very intentional about the system and to make the advisory boards more inclusive, strategic, and efficient. With that being said, this presentation is not intended to provide every detail, nor will we be able to answer every question at this point. Again, we really need to build this together. Rather, this is intended to begin the conversation as we collectively consider what our advisory board system could look like here in Asheville. So we ask that you keep an open mind as we explore a different way to align our resources and energy to build an advisory board system that will be best to assist our council in making those decisions, but also a way to hear from more of our community. All right, so to get us started, here is a visual of our current council appointments to boards. As you'll see in the middle, we have 20 advisory boards. Of these, there are 130 seats that are appointed by City Council. We currently have 2 boards and commissions that are advisory boards that are frozen, which are the Citizens Police Advisory Committee and the Rec Board. So excluding those, this proposal could potentially affect 112 current advisory seats. Again, talking very specifically about our advisory commissions with 20, we have one of the most in the state, especially when you consider our population in comparison. As an example, in the past 3 years, the council has created 6 new standing boards. So I'm going to toss it over to Brenda to talk a little bit more about the challenges.
Sarah, one of our participants is still a couple slides back. Can we figure out if that's all participants or if that's just the one?
Oh, great question. Is everyone seeing current structure and challenges?
Yes.
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 Thinking it was a glitch on the one participant's in. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Brenda Mills. I'm the director of the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And as everyone has, our Councilwoman Whistler and Sarah has said, we thank you so much for your time today and for being here. So why are we proposing a change to the current system? We've heard from board members and staff and council members that the current system isn't as efficient or as effective as it could be. In review of exit interviews and conversations with board members and staff, these 4 challenges keep emerging. Unclear committee roles and responsibility, disconnect and or duplication of priorities and work between advisory boards, unclear communication flow up to the full council, management limitations like competing budget requests and staff capacity. And as a result, we have a lack of consistency. We're hearing more community frustrations around consistency and productiveness of boards, and are experiencing more operational issues due to staff turnover and evolving workloads. That's why we thought it was very important to start this conversation now. Next slide. That's not the next slide.
It is. Snuck that one in there on you, Brenda.
Sorry.
But I do want to pause here for reflection. If you could, in the chat, put 3 words or values that you think a successful boards and commissions could look like. So for example, we're in this proposal, you're going to hear us say strategic, efficient, and inclusive. But we want to hear what your 3 values might look like. The goal at the end, after all these work sessions, would be to make a word cloud and just kind of have a visual of what, as a community, what a successful boards and commissions could look like. All right. Switch. So, all right, while you guys are thinking about that, I will jump to the next slide. And just to take a step back here to talk about what the foundational document for this restructure is. The Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted in 2018 and establishes that high-level vision to guide citywide policy decisions over the next 10 to 15 years. Next slide. If you're not familiar with the comprehensive plan, it is often referred to as Living Asheville. It provides that background information, goals, and policy opportunities for each of the 6 identified themes as you've seen here. The whole document, and it is very extensive, can be found on the city's webpage. So why the comprehensive plan? There was very extensive community input process, including a 15-member advisory board of community representatives drawn from relevant boards and commissions. The draft was also reviewed by several of our boards and commissions to prioritize the plan strategies. Additionally, this document is very thorough and not only identifies community goals, but also includes specific strategies and performance measures. It could be an excellent tool to lay the groundwork for our boards and a reference for them to lean on when we're thinking through our roles, responsibilities, and even considering trade-offs. So now, the proposed system. This proposal that you're going to hear today is a very holistic systems approach to be very intentional and strategic about how we utilize resources, city resources. The work of the boards and commissions is not going away. It's important work, and that's why we have our boards and commissions. We also recognize that we have really great volunteers and a lot of expertise and lived experiences. The commitment, opinions, and concerns of our citizens are a source of value and organizational asset. So as such, this proposal is for a new system to harness our community expertise and create a workflow to collaborate and cultivate real solutions to some real community issues. Right now, this is an idea, it's a proposal. We are hoping to hear more, and hopefully this will spark some new ideas that we can hear again in the breakout sessions when we have an opportunity to talk in smaller group discussions, and then we can come back out as a group. All right, so with that in mind, let's jump into the proposed restructure is or could look like. So in the next few slides, I'm just going to talk through how each of these levels of participation could work. So starting with the governing board, which is our city council, would look the same, no proposed changes. On the council committee tier, however, we do propose some changes here. Looking at our current council committees, we have 6. There's currently 6 council committees, a majority of which were created in 2006, so 16 years ago. Council committees are made up of 3 council members, and like advisory boards, they were created to vet policy decisions before going to the full council for council adoption. We think that it's time to update these arms of council to better reflect council's identified priorities. We propose updating the council committees to the 5 shown here. As you'll see, housing and community development and planning and economic development committees would operate and look mostly the same, but we do propose 2 new council committees, which would be healthy environment and community and equity and community safety, both of which council has expressed as very high priorities. And as such, these important themes should be built into our council committee structure. So still looking at the council committee tier here, In this proposal, council committees would hear regular reports and also approve and provide guidance on the work plans for our appointed advisory boards, which we'll talk about next. Okay, so moving to appointed advisory boards, which is currently our boards and commissions level, created by City Council, as you know, to provide and gather input on city policy issues. This proposal is for 4 advisory boards appointed by council. These advisory boards would be charged with evaluating community input, data, and trade-offs to make comprehensive policy recommendations to that council committee. Additionally, these advisory boards would give assignments to working groups. At this level, the advisory boards would be more like a community governing board, and in the way that they'd be more action-oriented and expected to vote regularly and make those comprehensive recommendations to council. Advisory boards will be appointed by council and directly accountable to the council. Additionally, these advisory boards would have the ability to create working groups and would be charged with a specific issue that would be charged with specific issues and research and that robust discussion within the board scope. Working groups, which we'll talk about next, would report directly to the advisory boards. But first, I want to pause here to look at the 4 advisory boards, which would be appointed by the council. The 4 advisory boards are based on the themes identified in the comprehensive plan. They would report directly and regularly to the corresponding council committee, as seen here. Consolidating the council appointed advisory boards to these themes would better allow those boards to think and work on big picture policy decisions and therefore evaluate the trade-offs and better incorporate the community input at that level. We expect that the outcome of fewer advisory boards would be more community members able to tune in and focus at this level. Take public comment, for example. In 2021, the city received approximately 100 pre-public comments for advisory boards, a majority of which are for 2 advisory boards, and half of our advisory boards have not received any public comments to date. We hope to expand our reach and get more community members able to engage and have their comments heard by a wider array of stakeholders at this level. And finally, we would have working groups. Working groups would look very similar to task forces and/or subcommittees that we use today. They would be community-driven task forces that are created and dissolved with a specific task. Working groups would be made up of less than a quorum of that advisory board and would include additional stakeholders who are not members of the advisory board. These advisory boards would be required to reach out to identified stakeholders using a new engagement stakeholder database. These working groups would not be official public bodies, and therefore their work would be much more informal, allowing them to meet as frequently as needed. All right, Brenda is going to tell us a little bit more about the engagement stakeholder database.
Brenda, you're muted.
And I was just doing it so intensely. As Sarah just mentioned, thank you all for your patience. These advisory boards will have access to the engagement stakeholder database to create working groups. So what is the stakeholder database, you may ask? As a result of the equity assessment, the Office of Communications and Public Engagement is compiling an engagement stakeholder database of various community and interest groups. The advisory boards will have access to the engagement stakeholder database and be able to call upon those most interested, affected, and knowledgeable on the given issue. Reaching out to these stakeholders will ideally provide for more inclusive working groups and therefore recommendations. The engagement stakeholder database will be fluid with people added as identified or volunteered and eliminated upon their request. So in other words, you're not there forever. Next slide. And how can you get involved? We know that personal time could be a barrier to getting involved. Fluid working groups allow more community members to get involved with focused time commitment in the issues that matter most to them. Advisory board members, on the other hand, will have an invested time commitment and an expectation to be prepared to make decisions. The working group structure is not new. Many of our advisory boards are utilizing working groups now, and it has been successful for getting the work done. However, they are not as accessible or as inclusive as they could be. The change we would see with this proposed structure is that there would be a requirement to reach out to identified stakeholders on the given issues. This will help to ensure an inclusive group of community members at the table. Next slide. So let's talk about equity. What is equity in society? Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. Social equity is impartiality, fairness, and justice for all people in social policy. Social equity takes into account systematic inequalities to ensure everyone in a community has access to the same opportunities and outcomes. Inclusiveness is a fundamental part of this proposal. The working group structure allows for more flexibility for individuals to participate and to attract a more diverse cross-section of the community to be able to participate in the decision-making process. Working groups could be less of a time commitment and or more flexible time commitment. This proposal will not take away opportunities for the community to participate, nor will it stop the good work being done by the community and by African American Heritage Commission or the Human Relations Commission. Rather, we think this proposal will better connect the work being done to City Council, so we will see more action and policies. Thank you. Turn it back to Sarah.
Unmuted. All right, so I'm circling back to the communication flow here. The working groups would do a deep dive into specific tasks or research, making recommendations to the appointed advisory boards. Advisory boards would have that much broader themes and will have to evaluate trade-offs and solicit community engagement to make more comprehensive recommendations through regular reporting to that corresponding council committee. The council committees will provide guidance to the advisory boards and continue to vet and make recommendations for full council adoption. So for our neighbors following along or interested in a specific issue, you will be able to see a matter from the start to finish. The purpose of this slide is to give examples of what possible working groups could look like, listed here on the right. The work is not going away, but these working groups will be charged with a clear focus area and have some sort of time bound, which would generally be when the task is completed. For example, Joe may not be able or even interested in serving on the Multimodal Transportation Commission for 3 years, but he is very interested in traffic calming in his neighborhood and he wants to be part of those discussions. These working groups would not only allow for more flexibility to get involved, but he would also be notified when these conversations are happening. Unless you are able to check 20 agendas a month, it's really hard for our community to know what or even where these discussions are happening. As such, continued participation of our community expertise will be vital to make sure these working groups are successful. So that is the proposed restructure. I'm going to circle back to those 4 challenges that were previously identified and highlight different ways on how this restructure could address some of those named. When we talk about unclear roles and responsibilities, this could be a real opportunity to modernize the establishing ordinances and to clarify those roles, expectations, and reporting structure, many of which are very outdated and do not reflect modern practices. Communication flow to council. There would be a clear pathway to make recommendations directly to council and to get council feedback and therefore get the resources in the early stages of discussions. We talk about limited and competing resources. With better aligned committee work with council priorities in the comprehensive plan. With fewer boards operationally, we could have a team of cross-departmental staff support as opposed to just one managing staff person. We would also advocate for a dedicated facilitator. We have seen how productive committees and meetings can be with a dedicated facilitator, helping the board stay within their scope and reach their goals. When we talk about duplicated efforts or the lack of priorities between our committees, again, these advisory boards would discuss the broader big picture policy and have to evaluate those trade-offs, which will also help to eliminate some of the silo effect that we have on boards, but also within our organization. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Councilwoman Whistler to provide some information about the breakout sessions.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we're gonna divide up into two groups and ask you some questions and try to get some dialogue going, and then we'll join back together and then split out again and have a different set of questions. During the breakout sessions, you've all been really great about using the chat and staying muted, etc. And we really appreciate that. But once we get into the breakout sessions, we hope to have some dialogue. But I just wanted to remind you that we're here to listen to each other. So we want people to give their input, but after you've given your input, step out and step in to speak and then step out. We will only have about 20 minutes in each of these breakout sessions, so be mindful of time. If you don't feel like you've gotten your point across or your question addressed or recorded, we will share ways that will guarantee that we're not going to lose that input. We will be using a tool called a Jamboard, and when you get into the breakout sessions, the folks will be explaining how to use that Jamboard, and that'll be another tool for us to use to capture to hold on a minute to capture the information. Sorry, there's some conversation going on in the room. I got a little distracted. So again, you're going to have a facilitator once we get into these breakout sessions, and they'll explain any procedures as we go. So we really would appreciate if you'd adhere to some of these rules, and remember, everybody would like their voice heard. Are you ready? Okay. 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 So next slide. And who's explaining this? That's me? Oh, I'm explaining the Jamboard. Okay. Well, there we go. I hope you got this is the first time we've done this, so I apologize if I don't sound very together. So if you've ever been in a meeting and you've used sticky notes on walls, basically this is like a digital sticky note wall. And so and as you know, with sticky notes, you can't write a dissertation. It's the idea is you write something down and it'll be posted up so that everybody can view. If you have a hard time with the technology of that, in your breakout session, what you can do is just put your thought in the chat, and we will have staff in those breakout sessions typing up your comment and posting them on your Jamboard. So,
and I just need a minute to figure out these breakout rooms.
Okay.
But you will be seeing an invite shortly. If you push join, it will take you in there. But again, working on that.
This might be a good time, if you didn't already put in your thoughts, your 3 words, to go ahead and put that into the chat so that we can capture it, of your vision of what successful boards and commissions would look like.
As well as, if you haven't already, if you put your name and what board and commission you're associated with, or your neighborhood, just so we would like to just make sure that we've captured the number of folks who or the folks who are joining tonight. And some of these questions that have been in the chat, I know there was a question about the database. We're still looking at how that database is going to be formed. And someone asked, I believe, would the list be public? And that's a question that we're struggling with. So I'm not 100% sure yet, but we will, before this proposal gets any more in the weeds, we'll get an answer to that question. So we appreciate your patience. There's just a little bit of technology here.
Hey Gwen, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Tanya Rodriguez here. What from what I understand with the process of recommendations going to City Council, it's the commission creates a recommendation, and then City Council receives that recommendation, and then City Council then sends that recommendation to the committees. Am I?
Okay, wait. My mute button is being weird on me. Are you asking under the current system, or are you asking under the proposed system? Okay, so the current system, basically what happens is and again, this is a systemic issue. It basically relies on your council liaison to basically bring forward a recommendation. And that council liaison then either basically has to get consensus from other council members in order to bring that forward to the full city council. Sometimes those have gotten lost in translation. And I think that's why sometimes, systemically, some of these recommendations just aren't making it up to the full board. But we're hoping that under this new proposal, Jerry, that will, that we're not going to get anything lost in translation from working groups to advisory boards to city council. Did that help?
Heard. Thank you.
Okay, so you're gonna go into your working groups, and then we'll join back up. And you've got 20 minutes. So thank you.
Are you still working on adding some of us to breakout? Oh no, this is the breakout session.
I think we are
No.
presently in the breakout.
You are not actually. I had to pull out staff, and so I'm going to be pretty new in there right now. Thank you.
And your name is Collective Liberation?
And like clockwork.
What's your name?
My name is Tanya Rodriguez. I'm
Hi,
chair of the Human Relations Commission.
Hmm.
And like clockwork, everybody froze. So, gonna stay with camera off. I'm Mel's also a commissioner with the Human Relations Commission as well.
Great. Do we have a facilitator for this?
Sounds like not yet. It might still be working towards coming in technically. So I see Patrick's here. Patrick, you've had some strong feelings about this. Would you care to share how you feel about, or is the sunshine request? Patrick's like, no.
I'm Sharon Summerall. I'm on the Urban Forestry Commission, and I'm also on the Neighborhood Advisory Commission. And we at UFC are a highly functioning committee, and we're all concerned. And we submitted our motion of disapproval of this for many reasons. And I'm also on NAC, and I've been 4 years on the UFC. We function very well. We're all hard workers. We've worked with the city effectively. So our thing is that yes, there's probably some problems somewhere, but nobody's specific of what the problem is. And if say there's been a problem at Urban Forestry Commission with something that has not worked with how council wanted to see it, we've never heard anything. So I knew this was coming about for the last 3 years because it's been in the back. I've been told that this was coming, so it was not a surprise for me. But my problem with this is if there's a boards and commission that is not working, is not functioning, then why isn't there some conversation with that boards and commission and find out why it's not functioning? Can it become more functional, and what would be required?
Says that the breakout room 2 is wrapping in 20 seconds. So I would like to know more about the Urban Forestry Commission and how you functioned with their recommendations, because you guys are doing an amazing work with that.
I'm sorry, the breakout session didn't really work for us, folks. So we're just going to do this and hope that we can do it with 30 people. We apologize for that. So first, let's talk about the first questions we're going to be talking about is the advisory boards. And I just wanted to give you a quick recap that the advisory boards will be aligned with the comp plan, and they will be appointed by city council, and they will be action oriented. They'll be receiving information, et cetera, but their meetings, et cetera, will look a lot more like kind of a city council, and they'll be asked to look at issues at a high level, and then they will go ahead and appoint working groups for detailed discussions. So if Steph, do you want to?
Sure. Hey, everybody. It's Steph Munson-Dahl with the city's Planning and Urban Design Department. And I've got Amber Weaver. You there with me too?
I certainly am.
Excellent. And Haley's helping us out too. We're doing this as a little team here. Thanks, everybody. So the first thing we want to do is just talk a little bit about how we want to make sure everybody understands how to use the sticky note system before we start answering this. And as a recap, you can use the sticky note system because it helps us kind of externalize our thoughts, or you can use the traditional chat if you're having trouble with the sticky notes. But one thing we like about the sticky note system is that you're going to be able to kind of build on other people's comments and group them into areas, again, like a mind map if you want to. So, Gren, did you get everything you needed on the advisory board piece of that? You did? Okay, so I am going to go ahead and what you'll see is on your left-hand side, there is the fourth icon down. It looks like a little sticky note. You can just
Did we send the link for people to get into the Jamboard?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Haley, can you put the link in the chat for us?
I just did.
Oh, Amber, thank you. So if everybody wants to get in there now, that would be great. So if you go ahead, and you don't have to do this right yet, but I'm just going to show you where it is on the fourth icon down. There's a little note, and when you click on it, it's gonna pop up a little thing that says sticky note, and you can just write on it what your thoughts are. I'm going to put everyone is interested in being civically active. I'm going to write that down. And I'm going to hit save and it's going to show up on the board. There you go. Somebody else put a little hello in there, and that's fine too. So I'm gonna remove mine. But what we're looking for in this first question, and since we're in a large group, we'll have about 10 minutes to kind of think through this question. We're asking you what is working well? Like, what can we build on? What can we celebrate? And what do we not want to lose with the current structure of boards and commissions?
Does everybody know how to participate? Is anybody having trouble?
That fourth icon down on the left-hand side, if you click on it, well, first you have to be in the Jamboard. Looks like not everybody is.
And Steph, I have my pointer pointed to the fourth icon down, left vertical. Can you see it?
I can see that it's highlighting sticky note, but I can't see
Great.
your pointer.
That's fine. So where
We've
the
got
icon says
about
sticky
13,
note.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18. We've got about 18 of the folks that are in the meeting participating on the Jamboard. And again, yeah, thank you, Jerry. If you're having a problem using the Jamboard or getting into it, just think about the question. What is working well with the current structure, and put it right in the chat. Greta says, I'm seeing a background image of a presentation slide on the Jamboard.
One thing to note is when you land on the Jamboard, there are 14 slides and you're on slide 1. So you need to advance
That's right.
up to slide 2 and
I
put
don't
your
know
notes
how they
there.
do that.
So up at the top, there are arrows left and right. And what Jay is saying is correct. You need to be on slide number 2. Thank you, Jay. So we're starting a thread here on the opportunity for public comment. Being able to focus on specific topics. And Miss Sophie, I don't know if you just joined us, but we are working on a collaborative board to answer the question about what is working well with the current way we look at boards and commissions. There is thank you, Brenda Mills, for adding another link to the Jamboard in the chat. If anybody who hasn't gotten on yet wants to click on that link, you'll be able to go up to the top of the presentation where there's right and left arrows and go to page number 2. That's the page we're working on right now. Sharon, are you wanting to add some comments and not able to use the board?
I don't know how to put the board up and look at what's going on with the page I'm on now to see everybody. I mean, when I go to the board where the sticky notes are, I completely leave you guys. Is that how it's supposed to go?
That's how that, yeah, that is how that works. So you can either stay in the meeting and see what's happening, or if you can't do a split screen, you just work on the board and then you can click on another tab and come back to us when you're ready.
Okay. What was page 2 when you said page 2?
Yeah, so this little Jamboard has different pages. You can use the arrows up at top. We're on the first question, which is page 2.
Oh, the first question is page 2.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I know that this is a lot, y'all, and you are our first session, so we're going to be learning from you. We appreciate your patience on this. Patrick made a great comment, which is all you have to do is, just type something in the chat here. If you can't work on the Jamboard, and we can create a sticky note for you. And all we're just grouping some thoughts together now about what is working well with the current structure, what people like, and what we can build on. I like that it seems like that it depends on the board you're on. You might have different strengths and weaknesses, or things that you really like, things that you want to keep.
And there was Alex asked the question about people calling in being able to participate. If people want to unmute on the call and read their comment, I'd be happy to add a note to transcribe it also.
Haley or Amber, would you be able to get Jerry's comment on a sticky note?
Yeah, I'll be happy to grab it.
Thank you, Haley.
Steph, what's our timing?
We're doing pretty good. I think we have a couple more minutes. And we can always see where we're at as a group here and move on to the next question, and come back and just make sure that, let's do that. We can always come back to these boards since we're together as a group, and make sure that throughout this little dialogue here that we allow for thoughts to emerge and gestate. Okay, let's go to the next question.
I'm headed there in just a second.
Thank you, Amber.
You bet. Here we go.
Okay, so if you remember from the presentation, there were some key identified issues, and what we want to know now is what issues did we miss? What are some of the issues with the current structure that we need to be making sure that as a community that we're providing mitigation strategies for, we're addressing without unintended consequences?
Sharon, if you just want to type your comments into the chat, I'll be happy to make you a sticky note. Just type in what reference into what page you wanted them on, whether it was
Yeah, I
first
finally
question.
got it down and realized I was on page 1 when I was typing. So I got everything that I typed put on the front on page 1, and I should have gone on page 2.
We can probably copy and paste it over.
Okay, and then now I think I've got it now.
Okay. You're
Okay,
good.
sorry.
No worries.
I'll know this by the second meeting, I guarantee you.
Yeah, this is just a practice.
For all of us.
I mean, I guess it's worth saying if any people, because not all of us are outspoken or extroverts, if there's anybody that's having technical difficulties of any kind, if you just want to unmute yourself and you want to say something that we can put on a sticky note, please do.
So I've gone ahead and shared a different framework because citizens get to share their vision of what it is you're trying to accomplish here, rather than saying it's the City of Asheville framework of whatever boards and commissions restructure is looking like right now. So that's what's up in the upper right hand municipal strategic innovation matrix. That's me saying there's some other elements, there's other cohesion, other visions of cohesion out there that are worthy to look at. And I'm not gonna do a presentation on it right now, but it's there.
Thanks, Grant. That's a good point for anybody else who has, it says, what is missing? Your answer might be, hey, what's missing is a thought about this other way.
Well, I've been thinking about this too. I've been watching. I've been
I
watching City
would think
Asheville
that
for a
all
long
30
time.
people on here have been thinking about it, which is great. And hopefully, one thing we can kind of bears repeating is that please spread the word. We are looking to, we do have a lot of people who've been responsive, but we want to make sure that everyone who's interested can attend. And if we need to think about other ways to make it more inclusive, we absolutely will. I'm glad it looks like people are getting more comfortable with using this note system. And Haley, thank you for getting other people's comments up on here. And don't worry if you think your comment is, if you're questioning your comment, but you want to put something in there, put it in there.
I just asked for clarification. I'm looking at some of the responses, and it seems like some of them are about the current structure and some of them are about this process, the restructuring and pilot process. Which are we supposed to be responding to here?
Well, the question is really about, we identified issues with the current process. Those are the the unclear committee roles and responsibilities, unclear communication flow. Those are the things that are identified issues with the current process. So we were asking what is missing as far as identifying issues. But I get you, Jay, and I think that we are going to be able to kind of sort or categorize these into people, like perhaps like grants, like what is missing with a different kind of proposal. So they may be answering it differently. And if people feel like they want to code their sticky note to say, this is what's missing from your proposal, this is what's missing from community dialogue, this is what's missing from the current structure, go ahead and stick that in there. We'll appreciate it. I love the diversity here because some of it is very specific and some of it is just general. So thank you, Amber, for trying to make some more space for people. How about we give it another 30 seconds and we move on to the next question. Like I said, we can revisit all questions when we do a wrap up for this section. And I'll also say from a staff perspective, thank you so much for the clarifying questions you're putting in the chat, because it's helping us understand which points of communication we are not being clear on. So keep that coming. All right, now you can, you can stay on your page of the Jamboard, but we are going to move on to the next question, which I believe it's page 4. All right, so as you know, the way we are proposing that it be structured is to use our comprehensive plan, Living Asheville's themes, to mirror council committees. And the proposed advisory boards then would look like these 4: equitable community, well-planned community, housing advisory, and healthy environment and livable community. So, thinking about this, I know many of you probably aren't experts in the Living Asheville plan. I sure hope you're not, because then you might have a lot of time, or you can come to work for the city if you are. But from your thoughts on this, what are you concerned that might be left out? I know you might not know exactly the answer to this, but you've got ideas. Oh, I like that it's in the form of a question. That's a good way to put things down. I'm going to go ahead while we're in here, and at your own time, you can do this, but I'm going to put a link into the chat that is our flipbook version of the comprehensive plan. And the reason why I love this flipbook version so much is that in the upper corner, usually it's in the upper right-hand corner, there's a search function. And you can just put in, for example, public art, and you can find every time that public art is mentioned in the Living Asheville plan. So this book is divided into a lot of different areas, and one of the sections provides information in all the different themes that we have been discussing.
I'm sorry, could you give me a shorter version of that?
Of the comprehensive
What you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So so what I was just saying is that there's a link to a version of the comprehensive plan in the chat. And then if you wanted to find out more about, for instance, so some of the names like well-planned community. So maybe you want to Google a board. You could even Google public art or search. Ooh, I didn't want to use that word. Search public art board in there and see how it's mentioned. But if you were interested, Sharon, in seeing what it said about equitable community, you could just put that in the search function, and in the themes would come up. You'd see every time it was mentioned. I think this is, an important piece for everybody to consider, right? Is that if the proposal is saying that the comprehensive plan would help provide the framework for this, then the community surely wants to have access to the comprehensive plan and know how often it's being updated or what things we're trying to implement. Part of all this. I actually made it longer, Sharon. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No, actually, clear.
I want to say something about this in my note is that, real fast, is that I recently asked, thinking about all of this, is that I had just asked for the PUD, the Planning and Urban Planning Department, about the high performance implementation phase of Living Asheville. And they said that's going to be coming up in coming months. But Living Asheville, the final document came out in 2018. And now we're moving on to restructuring boards and commissions around the concept of Living Asheville. And it's like, I just say cart before the horse. So, and it's just like renaming, the idea of renaming the public safety committee in all of this. That's high stakes. That's and I'm not going to go into that right now, but that was the first thing I said this evening is don't mess with public safety committee until we have public safety moving in a cohesive direction.
Well, let's hope we get that down on a sticky note. For everyone's benefit, I do work for the Planning and Urban Design Department, and we've been working on, we have a ton of implementation work that's been happening since 2018, and we're actually working with our Office of Data and Performance right now to be able to tell that story about what has been accomplished and what some of the key priorities are moving forward. So we recognize that you may not have seen a lot of communication about what we'll be doing, but yeah, I think that's probably what's coming down the pipe. Are we seeing new stickies, or are we feeling like, I think this was our... So these were the three questions. Yes, Cindy will do that. These were the three questions that we wanted to focus on for this section. So at this time, what I want you to do is, if you're in the Jamboard, you can use your back arrow up at the top to actually move to any one of these questions and make sure that you've gotten down any input you wanted on these. So as a reminder, the first question was, what is working well with the structure? The second question was, we've put out there that there were 4 main issues identified with the way boards and commissions are currently structured. Are there other things we need to consider? And then the third one, of course, is here, which is, if this structure was using the comp plan categories, what would be the concerns of being things that might be left out? I think we are good. I think we have captured some of this input, and we are now going to move on to the second category. So the next slide is going to say end of breakout session 1, and I'm going to ask Sarah if there's anything that we need to connect on before we give just a reminder and reiteration of the next piece here.
Yes, thank you, Steph. Yes, so now we're going to shift gears and focus and think about working groups. So that is a new slide deck. I think Jerry's going to post that link into the comments here now. So it'll be the same idea, but it is going to be a new slide deck. So once we get that link, it'll be, please click that link, and then we'll continue with some different questions about working groups.
Okay, Sarah, so I'm also going to stop sharing my screen.
Perfect. And we'll go ahead and share now. One moment.
had some questions in the chat about what are going to be done with these sticky notes, and I'm not sure if that's something we'll be discussing at the end or not, but I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, I think Sarah will do a wrap up at the end.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
All this, sorry, go ahead, everybody. All this is going to be saved, and then we're having, I think, 3 more of these kind of working sessions, and so all this is going to be captured and will be on the city's website. And some of these questions, if anybody is, hopefully you've gone to the city's website and already looked at frequently asked questions, but what we'll try to do is capture some of these questions in the frequently asked questions, and then get you answers, some of which may be still working on that.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick off this second set of questions. I don't know if Brenda was going to introduce the
I am.
topic. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Just as a really quick recap, working groups would look similar to like task force and or subcommittees. They would be community-driven task forces that are created and dissolved with a specific task. They'd be less than a quorum of the members of the advisory board and would include additional stakeholders. The engagement stakeholder database, we're going to use that to kind of do a little broader outreach into the greater community. It's not an official public body, and so it's a little bit more flexible when it meets. And then all working groups will be accountable to the advisory board that created them. So having that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Will. Thank you, Will.
Great. Thanks, Brenda. Hey, everyone. My name is Will Palmquist. I'm also with Planning and Urban Design, and I'm just going to be helping kind of run through these 2 other questions that we have. So if you all flip to the second page of this second Jamboard that's linked in the chat, you can see we have a blank slate currently, so plenty of space to fill in. And basically, we're trying to answer the question of how do we ensure that these proposed working groups are inclusive? So how would these working groups, reflect Asheville as far as representation on it, or that, the barriers to join or to be informed about them are low enough, so if everyone has an opportunity to participate and that they reflect Asheville at large. So it's pretty open-ended, a lot of different ways, at least in my mind, that this could be accomplished. So yeah, plenty of room if you want to start putting sticky notes on and typing away, or type in the chat and we'll get it up on the Jamboard. And
Will, I hate to ask a stupid question. What do you mean by inclusive?
so basically just that it's, it could mean that it's a diverse group of people, or that everyone is able to participate. There's no, barrier or gate, or you have to be an expert about the subject necessarily, or you have to have a ton of time in your schedule, or available at certain times of the day or the evening to participate. So it's kind of like, everyone in Asheville can be a part of it, and the group kind of looks like Asheville overall, and it's diverse. And
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It can mean a lot of different things, so it's kind of everyone's different opinion and spin on it is, I think, appropriate.
Right. I mean, one of the ideas of this database, and that people have chosen to jump in on and say what things they're interested in. I mean, that's one of the ideas of that database, to make sure that we're reaching out to the community and not expecting the community to have to follow the issue, that we're actually telling them that a conversation is being had and inviting them in.
when you're talking about inclusive and you're talking about these working groups, a little bit more information on what you mean by inclusive, right? So is there going to be an application process? And if there's going to be an application process, how are those applications going to be presented? So are you going to have people put their names on there or not put their names on there, so you will just see maybe their qualifications? And are you going to have qualifications for these working groups? And if you're going to have qualifications, then that automatically doesn't make it inclusive. So by making something inclusive that opens it up to the community would look like, you know, potentially holding meetings and having sign up sheets, and whoever wants to sign up for whatever working group, they can. But to say, how do we ensure working groups are inclusive? We don't even know the process that you would have to create a working group. So how could we even address this question when we don't even know how you're going to create the working group? So I'm a little confused about that. Like, I mean, you talk about equity, right? And equity is removing barriers, right? And inclusiveness is what happens when you remove those barriers to equity. But if we don't know what your methods of creating a working group are, then how can we help you and the community help you to ensure the working groups are more inclusive? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of like,
This is Gwen, and
yeah,
that's an excellent question. And I think, can you mute? That's an excellent question, and this is what, you know, we are trying to get to. We're trying to develop these procedures in how to develop these working groups and how people get involved. So really, this is, you know, your ideas on how to make sure these groups are inclusive is what we're kind of asking you to do. We don't have those policies and procedures put in place yet. So, you know, some of the ideas you just said is, you know, maybe you just have people sign up, and, you know, if they want to be on a working group, they get to be on that working group. I mean, those are the ideas we're trying to capture, if that makes sense.
I hear it because I see, you know, a lot of suggestions, but they're not like actually anything that is based in promoting a level of inclusivity that's absolutely raw, that is a representative of the community. I mean, if it's a representative of a community, then Asheville's like 80% white. So then all the working groups would be white. So that in and of itself is a statement that really causes a lot of concern, because then the working groups would be unbalanced. So how are we going to bring in, you know, protections for that, or, you know, offer up an opportunity so that it doesn't be unbalanced in that way, you know, whether it's, you know, stakeholders meetings, you know, held in churches, or, you know, things that we can include all parts of the community. And it, you know, because I've heard that representative of, let's bring in representation of Asheville, but that's so off base, because the representation of Asheville is is a majority white. So, you know, it just concerned me. How do we ensure working groups are more inclusive? Because without knowing how you're creating the working group, how are we going to respond to this question? That's long story short. Thank you.
I think Dawa has her hand up.
I do. I don't want to take a lot of time because I want there to be as much time for folks to kind of reflect and contemplate and get some ideas up there. But maybe if we stick to the last question that was asked, before I jump in, I serve as the Communication and Public Engagement Director for the city and have been supporting the team that's kind of working through the development of this proposal. And I think it might be helpful, it was helpful to me to understand that the intention is with the working groups to really give the community the opportunity to develop what they looked like, right? So that is what I think we're after at this part of the workshop, right? Just that there is an intent for there to be some co-creation for what they look like. And so to start off that conversation to kind of get those juices flowing, because tonight's not the end, and Sarah's going to have more information for us about what the next steps are after this, as well as what we're going to do, what's going to be done with that information. But I thought maybe it might be helpful to insert that right now at this point, that this is the beginning of a conversation, and the intention is to work with whoever wants to work to define and develop the working group aspect of this pilot. The intention is for there to be co-creation. So on the inclusive end, and I really appreciate all of the comments that are made, because inclusivity is complex, right? So a piece of it can be demographics, a piece can also be who is most impacted, right? And so those are the opportunities that we have ahead of us to make sure that we're being more intentional, that we're looking at inclusivity from all of those different perspectives. Right. So is it, is a piece of it demographics, is a piece of it who's most impacted, is a piece of it who's adjacent to whatever issue might be being explored by the working group. There's a lot of different pieces to that. And all of that can really be fleshed out with whoever wants to continue on this part of the journey.
Thank you for that. I hear that and understand that would be like step number 4. But this, and how do we ensure working groups are inclusive? How can we answer this question if we don't even know how you intend the working groups to be formed?
And so just to that point again, we don't know. We're asking the community to define that. So I guess maybe in a perfect world, how would we want them to work, and what would inclusivity look like? So this is really a no barriers conversation. So more than reacting to something that's proposed, this is really, let's start from scratch. What does it look like? Maybe it looks like people who have children can participate. Or maybe it looks like people that have transportation barriers can participate. I hope that's a little bit more helpful. And we could have stated that this is kind of a no barriers exercise. If we were starting from scratch, because we are, what would it look like?
I was just wondering how, pardon me, Grant. I was just wondering how, like with that, I think it was just the inclusive part that got me, because it was like how, we're not even in the working group part, so we don't even know what that looks like for the working group in and of itself. So, it's like, to me, it's like the question is so far in the future that we lose sight of how do we create a working group in and of itself. What does a working group look like? Forget about the inclusive. What does a working group look like? How do we form a working group? If we don't even know what a working group is, how do we create a working group? What does that look like? And the inclusivity part of it, that happens when that question is asked. I feel like that inclusivity part is a bit like, it's like 4 steps ahead, because we don't even know what a working group is right now. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I love all of what you're saying, Dawa, and I'm on board with it. And I hear you. And I was just a little, caught up with the buzzword of inclusive when we don't even know what the working group actually is going to even, how many people are going to be on it, what, for what boards, have working groups, and, how do working groups function, what the boards are, what their functionalities are, what are the expectations of a working group, what is a working group in this, and so that we can build on how to create a space where those barriers to equity are broken down, or eliminated, so that they can be actually inclusive. That's just where I was coming from. Thank you.
So we need to see some models of civic engagement from other parts of the nation, if not around the globe, and then say, oh, those are cool components. Let's move that over here to City of Asheville, because we kind of look at the world from Asheville inward, and that's what we're doing right now. And that just answered what Tanya was, I think, going for, is what is working group, and also working group not being official City of Asheville. It's going to be official City of Asheville business if I'm on City Council. And I just mentioned citizens with disabilities. I don't think I deleted my note, but I just said City of Asheville has no record of doing anything significant with citizens with disabilities when you define equity or inclusion with City of Asheville. And the mayor's commission on citizens with disabilities is just a bunch of text on the website. Since Mayor Bellamy, there's been no mayor's commission on citizens with disabilities meetings, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. So maybe we should move on to the second question. If folks are pretty much done with this one, you can always go back to it at your leisure. But if we click on the next arrow, and maybe some folks have already started on this a little bit, click the right arrow at the top to go to the third slide, and that will get us to a new Jamboard with a new question. We only have two, so this is, I think, the last question for the meeting before we break out or summarize the discussion. So basically, this question is trying to ask, before you sign up for a working group, what would you want to know? So what information would be important that we relay to potential working group members, questions you might have before signing up, things that maybe you sign up and then realize, oh, I wish I had known this ahead of time. Maybe it would have changed my decision, or I wouldn't have signed up for 10 working groups if I knew it was going to be this much work. So I don't know, just kind of, stuff like that. How long is the term? Very, practical things, or how to best relay to potential members how these are going to function, or
And if I happen to miss anybody's comment in the chat that they want posted, just rest assured I'm also copying and pasting the chat over into a document. So I'm capturing all comments one way or another.
Yeah, it's still on.
Everyone's doing good. It looks like there's a good mix of kind of practical considerations and also kind of aspirational questions about, the value and how everything works together, and then also things like the time and digital versus in person and that kind of thing. So that's a good spectrum of answers. We'll let y'all go once the board's filled. So a few more slots left.
I have a question. Between the working group and the suggested advisory boards, how will those work? Will the advisory board be giving actions to the working group? And what happens when the working group feels that the advisory board needs to take an action and then starts to work on its own and then essentially becomes its own commission? And breaks away from the advisory board because the advisory board and the working group are no longer communicating. You know what I'm saying? Like, how does that work?
Hopefully we try to avoid that. That sounds like something would have gone wrong for that kind of disconnect. So my understanding is that the working group's going to feed back to the advisory boards, so they would help inform the decisions and the directions of the advisory boards. So they really should work in tandem. And the working groups are kind of more ephemeral, so they might, if a specific project or topic has either been addressed or is no longer relevant at the moment, it can go dormant and be constituted if needed. So they're more flexible, obviously, like they're couched under those fewer advisory boards.
So the working group, say the working group works together and they decide to work on an action that comes in. They bring it to the advisory board. The advisory board says, hey, we're not going to even mess with that. So the working group essentially forms its own commission, right? bypasses the advisory board and goes to the city council with their action, because now, because there's an extra step in between the boards and commission and city council, there's actually extra 2 steps between the boards and commissions and city council. It's working group, advisory board, council committee, and then council. So that is adding 2 steps to access to council. So what happens when the working group goes, we're just going to be our own commission, we don't need the advisory board? And so, Stephanie, I love the way that your gray is coming in, by the way. It looks beautiful.
Hey, I just wanted to respond in a general way and say, like, you're getting to the finer details of everything again, that we certainly don't want to prescribe. We want to hear from folks how, like, what are the pitfalls, which you've just identified, and also what are the solutions, right? So if there's a pitfall, we think they're going to, like, let's make sure that folks don't go rogue or become their own commission. Like, that's something we want to capture in these notes. Or I'm concerned about these working groups becoming, turning into a long-term standing board, something like that. But again, we're not prescribing the finer details of how everything works right now. And that's part of this process, is for us to hear all this information and use it to help create the next steps of these proposals.
Thank you.
All right, how are we doing on time? I'm not really sure when we were planning on kind of finishing this breakout group. But so we have maybe half an hour still in the overall meeting, and it probably gives us plenty of time to report back and wrap up. I don't know if folks can continue to work on these till the meeting's over, right? So there's still
That's
time.
right. Maybe, like, go back to the other questions that Will asked, if you just want to take a look at those boards and make sure they captured everything.
Yeah, let's take a moment to look at the first question, just see if anything to add there. All the way there? Or just just the working group first question. And then the idea was we were supposed to be in breakout groups. Being that we're not, the report out is going to look a lot differently. Ideally, we were going to hear from the different breakout groups, but we all had this conversation and we all were able to see what we posted. So if anyone wants to chime in with any themes that you're seeing, I know that we have a lot of really great questions. But to answer some of the questions about next steps, so much good information here, and I haven't been able to read all of them, so I'm assuming not everyone's been able to read everything. We will be capturing and saving these, and then yes, next steps could be, well, I'm not sharing my screen, but an invitation to exactly this, a working group. Admittedly, as we talked about today, this is an experiment of sorts. We're all here to learn, so let's feel what a working group could look like. And as you've heard, we do not have the answers. We're asking for help to create what it could look like. So it will be a learning process for everybody. But after we're done with the Jamboards, I'll put up a slide with a little bit more information about that would look like. So if you are interested in continuing this conversation and being part of the solution or just following along, you can put a note here in the chat, interested in following along, or you're not sure right now, what's the commitment? Great question. You can email us at the Restructure pilot. And we don't have a lot of information right now. Again, we're building it, and we need to hear from you. And I think these sticky notes, the conversation we had today, will help do that. So maybe one of the first steps that the working group does is take these and identify some themes, maybe answer some questions, and really start thinking about What does the time dedication look like? How do people sign up? How are they accountable to council, to the advisory boards, to the community? How are they inclusive? Just really thinking about these. As you've heard, the details are not defined. And I think this would be a really great opportunity to think about that together and work through a system that could maybe work. It's not going to be pretty. It's likely going to get messy at first with all new things. So that would be a proposed next step, is again forming an initial working group to do a deeper dive, analyze some of what we're hearing. Again, this is the first work session. Thanks for bearing with us with some of those technical difficulties. You're welcome to come back to one of the other work sessions. It'll be the same kind of formatting. And then you'll see that broader invitation to getting a working group together, and we'll do some deeper diving. If you're not interested in that part, but do want to follow along, of course, we'll keep that project pace updated. Timeline for information or for implementation, we don't know. This is one of the, again, we're learning so much from these, and it may be going back to the drawing board. It may be, we get it. I haven't read all the sticky notes. Maybe there's a great new idea that we're going to start over as a community. But eventually, yes, it will, go to a council committee and then a council. What we are proposing would be a pilot, so we can feel it first. But again, nothing has been decided because we don't know. Just talked a lot. Anyone? Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, can you repeat just how you want people to let you know about their interest in participating in the group that would work on these next steps? Just repeat it.
Definitely. And I'm also going to share my screen because it probably says it better than I can repeat it. 1 second.
Thank you.
Sorry, we got a lot of screens going on. 1 second. Well, rather than wasting everyone's time, we are having trouble pulling for sharing the screen for whatever reason. But to answer your question, Steph, one, if you are interested in staying involved and on that level in the working group, you can in the chat here sign me up, and we will capture that, and that we're going to create a distribution list of sorts. Or you're not sure right now, understandable. Please email the restructure pilot at publicinput.com, and we can capture it there too. There's a lot more details to come. Again, this is after these workshops, we'll have to reassess and bring the group together. Hope that helps to clarify a little bit.
Sarah, there's a couple questions again in the chat about where to find these recordings. And I believe, yes, that's correct, in the public engagement hub to the Sunshine request that posted the question. I just wanted to run that by you in case
Yes, and
that's not
so
correct.
the reason I paused is we were recording at the beginning, and I wonder if trying to break into breakout groups ended that. And I know Sunshine was also live streaming, and so I don't know if that has been captured either, but I'm not seeing our recording, which I apologize. That is one of the first session figuring it out. And so as the meeting administrator, I assume that I will get a follow-up after the meeting with the recording. I don't know that it's going to be the full piece right now. That we'll have to see. Regardless, what we do have will be posted on that public input page. And I see Patrick posted, okay, we're live streaming. And that is available at the link. Thank you, Patrick. Yes, really appreciate that. All right, I see hand up, Mel.
Melanie.
Hi. I have a question. I'm just a little confused, sorry, as to how all this is going to look moving forward after these workshops are done. Does the existing advisory board have a say on whether or not this actually gets implemented, or is the city just asking for our input and then moving forward with what they think is best? Like, does the advisory board have a vote on whether or not we agree to a restructure or no?
Okay, this is Gwen. At this point, you know, we're asking for public's input, and you know, this is why we're doing all this. Ultimately, advisory boards, et cetera, are a function of city council, so it'll ultimately be decided by city council.
Alex has their hand up. Alex, are you there? Grant, do you have a question?
Yeah, real fast. I asked who were the there were existing chairs of boards and commissions involved in launching all of this, and then a group of special stakeholders. And I asked who those special stakeholders were. I never got an answer. So that's kind of critical, is laying all of this out as to where all this came from. So I would do that. I would let us know.
Alex? Okay, what is the timeline on this is what Alex is saying. So what you can see on that last slide that was up, that Sarah had up, is that for the restructuring working group, we're looking at people who can commit to working with us. I think it's April through September right now, pending a pilot. So one of the things we were looking at is whether or not it would be worth not, you know, making some hard and fast decision, but trying something out during that time period either. So the decision-making timeline, I think the thing you need to consider is that there may be multiple decisions on this, right? So for instance, there may be a decision to try a pilot. There may be a decision to maybe what is figured out is to try it with certain boards, but not with others. And so the decision-making timeline, probably if we have this working group providing great information and recommendations to staff and city council this year, that we want to think that the decision-making timeline is on a parallel process with that. And one thing I'll just say with a caveat, for those of you who, and I think this is almost all of you who've worked with the city for more than 1 year, you know that we're really pretty responsive to community input, in my opinion anyway, as far as timelines go. So we might start at the beginning of a project and say, this is what we'd like to see the timeline be. But our responsiveness to community also means that we're going to be taking consideration things that we didn't know when we started this process out. So nothing is set in stone.
Hey, Dee, I see your hand up.
Can you hear me now? I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to take the opportunity to say I'm just really thankful for this entire process. And I want to tell the truth too. Most of the boards and commissions that I've witnessed over the years have been very ineffective, and they've been a waste of time, a lot of staff time and people time. And it's high time the city council took the initiative, if you will, to change what does not work. I want to say that I know there are a lot of people who don't agree, and I don't mind that. We live in a democratic society, but I do want to say kudos to City Council for finally taking the reins and realizing through probably staff turnover and everything else that this does not work. It is the definition of insanity. You serve no one by continuing this process, and council has been elected to put forth policies and programs to achieve the goals of the citizens. What better way than to hear from us from the grassroots up, put folks to work on a working committee and advisory board that takes that under consideration and advises council. So I just want to say thank you so much. I really do.
Thanks, Steve. I'm sorry, I said Alex is next.
Alex is asking, is increasing public participation a goal? Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah, Gwen, you want to talk about that?
Yes, I mean, that's inclusivity is one of the main goals that we have in here. I mean, and taking barriers away for people to participate in a flexible way, not being limited by term limits, not having, I mean, what keeps coming up to me is, I'm a single mom and I can't go to a meeting at 10 o'clock on the fourth Thursday every month. But I do want to be involved on an issue. These working groups are going to allow a lot more flexibility, and therefore I really hope that we get more participation, not just the 133 people that we currently have. So, but again, we're really looking, we're looking for your input on this, and but yes, the goal is increasing participation and increasing increasing inclusivity. That's the goal.
And Steve, I think you were next.
Steve Rasmussen, you have your hand raised?
Hi, thanks. I had trouble finding the button. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm one of those people who couldn't disagree more with Dee. I think this is pretty rough idea, and it's very, it seems very sweeping and drastic at a time when people are really having trouble trusting government in general, much less, local government. One of the big problems you're going to have is what are you going to do with the mandated enforcement functions and of like the Urban Forestry Commission and the Noise Board? What are you going to do with the development review functions of the Downtown Commission, the Planning and Zoning? What are you going to do with oversight functions like the Audit Committee? You know, how can you possibly roll all these things into just 4 groups, 4 boards, and have a meeting that doesn't go on for 3 days? You know, so I think, you know, really, I don't see why you don't just start with trying to help the existing boards. Maybe, you know, if we need more focus on the Living Asheville plan, let's have a Congress of boards, you know, regularly meeting maybe to discuss the plan. It's got a lot of conflicts in it that aren't being addressed anyway. And if you silo it out to these competing boards, that's just going to be big problems. So anyway, I'll email all this to you. Believe me,
Thank
I've been
you.
writing about that. So thank you for letting me say that.
Okay, so again, we really appreciate all your input tonight. And, you know, if you don't feel like you were heard, or maybe you know, come up with a different question later on, please put your suggestions and ideas in Restructure Pilot at publicinput.com. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Do you?
Yes, we're capturing the chat now, so please put any last minute thoughts in there so that it can be grabbed. Again, we're going to follow up with some FAQs, and there are 3 more work sessions. It will look similar. It will be the same questions, but again, that's to gather more information to come back to the drawing board. Oh.
So again, thank you so much for participating, and you know, we hope to continue to hear from you. Thanks. So with that, we'll sign off.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.